Have you ever wondered why something as quiet, as private, as intimacy still matters after 60, 70, or even 80? Isn't it supposed to fade with age? A tender memory, like a summer fling or a high school crush, sweet. But distant? That's what many of us were told. That aging meant letting go of closeness, of touch, of that gentle warmth we once shared so easily. But what if that belief, that soft fading away, isn't just outdated? What if it's quietly robbing us of our health, our happiness, and even our years? You see, this isn't just about romance. It's about connection, and how the loss of physical intimacy can quietly impact the way we sleep, the way we think, how we heal, and even how we see ourselves in the mirror. This isn't theory. It's science. It's human. And in many cases, it's preventable. Let me tell you a story. Helen is 74. She's been married to Robert for over 50 years. They love each other. Truly. They cook dinner together, watch TV, talk about the grandkids. But the hugs have gotten shorter, the kisses fewer. And one morning, as she brushed her hair in front of the mirror, Helen whispered to herself, "I can't remember the last time he looked at me like that." Not out of anger, not out of neglect, just time, habit, silence. What Helen didn't realize was that the quiet between them wasn't just emotional. It was physical, and it was affecting more than just her heart. Her sleep had changed. Her stress had risen. Her confidence had faded. And the spark, that vibrant energy that once made her feel alive, was slipping away. She didn't feel old, but she felt invisible. And maybe you felt that way too. Today we're going to talk about that, gently, honestly, and with care. Because intimacy in later life isn't about youth, or performance, or proving anything. It's about staying connected to your body, to your partner, to the quiet parts of yourself that still long to be seen, touched, and cherished. So, if you've been wondering whether this part of your life still matters, the answer is yes, more than ever. And the truth we'll explore today might just change how you care for your heart, your mind, and your relationships from this moment forward. Let's begin with the very thing most people overlook: why intimacy still matters long after the world stops talking about it. When people talk about aging, they often focus on what's lost: muscle mass, memory, energy. But there's something else that fades just as quietly, something we don't talk about in doctors' offices or at family dinners. Intimacy. Not just sex, but closeness. The feeling of being held. The comfort of shared breath. The glance that says, "I still see you." For many people over 60, that part of life slowly slips into silence. Not from lack of love, but from routines, from tiredness, from the subtle idea that maybe, just maybe, it doesn't matter anymore. But it does. Intimacy is more than desire. It's biology. It triggers hormones that support our hearts, balance our moods, strengthen our immune system, and even help us sleep. It's a form of emotional and physical nourishment, as essential as food or movement. When that closeness disappears, it doesn't scream. It whispers, in the form of loneliness, restless sleep, a sense of invisibility, a drifting apart that no one quite knows how to name. Take Martin and Joyce, for example. Married for 41 years. They shared a home, a history, and 2 children. But in recent years, Joyce felt distant. Not unloved, just untouched. Martin still made her coffee, still opened the car door, but he hadn't reached for her truly in years. One night, Joyce finally asked, "Do you still see me as your wife, or just your roommate?" Martin looked stunned. He hadn't realized how far they had drifted, or how deeply she still needed to feel close. That night, they didn't fix everything, but they talked, and slowly, over the weeks that followed, they found their way back, not through grand gestures, but through touch, attention, eye contact, presence. And Joyce later said something powerful. "I didn't want to feel young again. I just wanted to feel like I still mattered." That's what intimacy is really about after 60. Not performance, not perfection, but connection, the kind that keeps us emotionally rooted and physically alive. So if you felt that quiet space growing between you and someone you love, it's not too late to close it, because that distance, if left unchecked, does more than hurt your heart. it can begin to affect your health in ways you may not even realize. Let's talk about that next, starting with the organ that depends most on connection to stay strong, your heart. When we think of heart health, we often think of numbers, cholesterol, blood pressure, resting heart rate. We picture prescription bottles, treadmill stress tests, or low-sodium diets. But few people realize that one of the most powerful protectors of the heart is something far simpler and far more human: touch. Not just in a romantic sense, but in its purest form, the steady rhythm of closeness. A hand held, a shoulder leaned on, the soft, warm presence of someone who makes you feel safe. Science has known this for years. Studies from the University of Chicago and Harvard have shown that people over 60 who remain physically connected through intimacy, affection, even regular hugging, have lower blood pressure, steadier heart rhythms, and a reduced risk of cardiovascular events. One landmark study found that older adults who reported ongoing physical intimacy, whether sexual or affectionate, were 45% less likely to experience major heart problems over a 10-year period. Not because of exercise, but because of connection. Touch releases oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, which directly counters cortisol, the stress chemical that damages the heart over time. It improves circulation, reduces inflammation, and supports the elasticity of blood vessels. In other words, touch isn't just comforting, it's cardioprotective. Let's go back to Martin for a moment. After that late-night conversation with Joyce, they didn't suddenly become teenagers again, but they began holding hands more often, even in silence. They sat closer on the couch. She started resting her head on his shoulder during their favorite crime dramas. Small things, quiet things. But at their next checkup, Martin's blood pressure, which had been stubbornly elevated for years, had dropped nearly 10 points. Their doctor asked if he had changed medication. Martin just smiled and said, "Not medication, just attention." Here's the lesson. Sometimes, the very thing we've been told belongs to the young is the very thing that keeps us alive as we age. But while your heart may be the first to benefit from rekindled closeness, it's far from the only part of your body that needs it. Let's take a look at something most people never associate with intimacy: your muscles and joints. When we talk about staying active after 60, we often think of morning walks, gentle yoga, or maybe a swim at the community center. But what if I told you that one of the most overlooked and surprisingly effective ways to keep your body strong and flexible happens not at the gym, but in the bedroom? Intimacy is movement, real, meaningful movement. It engages your core, your legs, your arms, your breathing. It encourages stretching, shifting, balancing, all in a natural and enjoyable way. For seniors, this kind of low-impact, full-body activity can be incredibly beneficial. Regular physical intimacy helps maintain muscle tone, supports joint flexibility, and even improves coordination. It boosts circulation to areas that tend to become less active with age, especially in the hips, spine, and shoulders. And just like walking or dancing, it keeps your range of motion intact, gently, without overexertion. But here's the key. It's not about how often. It's about staying connected to movement, in whatever form that means for you. Take Grace, for example. She's 71 and has arthritis in both knees. She stopped going to her community exercise class because the movements became too painful. But she and her husband, Paul, began taking slow, intentional time for closeness again. Not just physically, but emotionally. Cuddling, massaging each other's shoulders, sharing long, slow embraces before bed. And over time, something shifted. Grace said, "I didn't realize how stiff I'd become until I started moving again, even just a little." Now, her mornings feel easier. Her joints feel looser. Her body feels alive again. Because movement, when done with love, doesn't feel like work. It feels like returning home to yourself. But here's the catch. When we stop using those muscles, even the subtle ones, our bodies begin to forget. Stiffness settles in. Balance declines. Confidence weakens. And before long, we avoid the very things that could help us feel stronger. That's why reconnecting physically, even gently, is more than a nice idea. It's part of maintaining your mobility and independence. But as important as the body is, there's one part of us, that may benefit even more from intimacy. And that's the part we often ignore until it begins to fade: the brain. Let's explore how intimacy can help protect your memory, focus, and mental clarity. Starting today, we often hear that to keep our minds sharp as we age, we should read more books, do crossword puzzles, or learn a new language. But there's something else, far more natural, deeply human, and surprisingly effective, that also supports our brain health: intimacy. During moments of physical closeness, whether it's sexual or simply affectionate, your brain releases a wave of beneficial chemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, the same neurotransmitters that improve mood, enhance memory, and protect cognitive function. They're not just feel-good hormones. They're brain builders. Dopamine sharpens focus and motivation. Oxytocin deepens connection and reduces stress. Endorphins calm the nervous system. And serotonin supports emotional stability and sleep. Together, they act like a daily multivitamin for the mind. When intimacy fades, your brain doesn't just miss the closeness. It misses this natural chemical support. Over time, that absence can quietly lead to foggier thinking, decreased memory recall, irritability, and even signs of early cognitive decline. Take Harold, for instance. At 76, he started feeling increasingly forgetful. He misplaced his glasses, repeated stories, and felt low motivation to do much of anything. His doctor ruled out serious illness and gently asked about his emotional and physical connection with his wife, Sandra. It had been years since they'd shared that kind of closeness. At first, Harold shrugged it off. "We're old," he said. But at Sandra's suggestion, they began slowly rebuilding intimacy. Not with pressure, but with curiosity. A kiss on the cheek before bed, holding hands during their evening walks. Then came deeper conversations, longer hugs, and gradually, a return of something Harold thought he'd lost: mental clarity. "I don't know if it was the hugs or the hormones," he laughed, "but I feel more awake than I have in years." Because intimacy, especially after 60, isn't just about bodies. It's about connection that keeps the mind engaged, alive, and emotionally responsive. And while the brain benefits are powerful, there's something else that may fade even faster without intimacy. And it's something no pill or puzzle can replace: your sense of emotional closeness. The feeling of truly being seen, valued, and held. Not just in conversation, but in quiet, loving presence. Let's talk about what happens when that emotional thread begins to unravel, and how to gently bring it back. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from being together, but no longer feeling close. It creeps in quietly, between two people who still care for each other, still share the same home, the same meals, even the same bed. But the warmth, the spark, the silent understanding that once passed through a touch, begins to fade. That's what happened to Evelyn and Jack. They had been married for 52 years. A good marriage, respectful, steady. But over time, their conversations became shorter, their routines predictable. They still laughed sometimes, still watched the news side by side on the couch. But one night, as Evelyn lay awake staring at the ceiling, she realized something heartbreaking. "It's been 6 months since he held me, and I can't remember the last time I felt like his wife, instead of just his roommate." She wasn't angry. She wasn't blaming him. She was simply aching for closeness, the kind that says, "I still choose you. I still see you. I still need to be near you." That kind of closeness isn't a luxury in later life. It's a lifeline. Research shows that emotional loneliness, especially in long-term relationships, is linked to increased rates of depression, high blood pressure, and even weakened immunity in older adults. It's not just sad. It's dangerous. And the strange thing is, it often goes unnoticed. Because no one talks about it. Because we've been taught that intimacy is for the young, and silence is part of aging. But that's not true. Rebuilding emotional intimacy doesn't mean reliving your honeymoon. It starts with small moments of presence. A hand on the back as you pass each other in the kitchen. A genuine, lingering look in the eye. A few simple words. "I miss you." Jack didn't know Evelyn felt that way until she told him, and he cried when she did. Not because he didn't care, but because he hadn't realized how much he had drifted without even meaning to. Since then, They've started doing something new. Each night before bed, they sit for 5 minutes and just hold hands. No TV, no phone, just stillness and each other. It may sound small, but to Evelyn, it's everything. Because when touch disappears, something far greater than contact is lost. It's the quiet reminder that we matter to someone else, not out of habit, but out of choice. And yet, this quiet loss of closeness doesn't just affect the heart or the mind. Sometimes, it begins to affect the very way we sleep. Let's talk about how physical connection, or the absence of it, can shape the way we rest, heal, and recharge every night. Margaret had tried everything. Chamomile tea, white noise machines, breathing exercises, even melatonin. But nothing seemed to help her fall asleep or stay asleep. She'd lie awake for hours, her mind buzzing, her body restless. And each morning, she woke up feeling just as tired as the night before. One afternoon, during a casual conversation with her doctor, she mentioned her sleepless nights. After a pause, the doctor asked gently, "When was the last time you felt close, physically or emotionally, to someone you love?" Margaret was quiet. She hadn't really thought about it, but it had been a while. That's when she learned something few people ever connect. Intimacy and sleep are deeply intertwined. During physical connection, especially after orgasm, the body releases a powerful combination of hormones. Oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, which promotes trust and calm. Prolactin, which creates a sense of satisfaction and relaxation. And serotonin, which helps regulate mood and sleep cycles. Together, these hormones act as a natural sedative, helping the body transition into a state of deep, restorative rest. But when intimacy fades from our lives, whether through age, illness, or emotional distance, those chemical signals begin to disappear. And in their absence, stress takes hold. Cortisol, the stress hormone, rises, and sleep becomes harder to find. For older adults, this imbalance can create a dangerous cycle. Lack of intimacy, poor sleep, increased stress, greater emotional distance, even less intimacy. And round it goes. But here's the hope. It doesn't take grand passion to restore this balance. Even gentle touch, holding hands, cuddling, a back rub, can begin to reset the nervous system and ease the body towards sleep. Margaret and her husband didn't try to fix everything overnight, but they did begin lying closer in bed again. They began ending the day not with the news, but with a moment of stillness and soft conversation. Some nights, they simply held each other in silence. And slowly, Margaret began sleeping better, not because of a pill, but because of presence. Because sometimes, the deepest rest comes not from stillness, but from feeling safe, warm, and loved, right before we close our eyes. But intimacy doesn't just impact how we sleep. It shapes something even more personal, something that lives deep within our self-image. Let's talk next about what happens to our confidence and sense of worth when physical affection begins to fade. Helen used to love looking in the mirror. Even as she aged, silver hair framing her face, laugh lines tracing the stories of a life well lived. She always found something to smile at, a sparkle in her eye, a curve of a smile that still held a hint of mischief. But somewhere along the way, that changed. It wasn't sudden. There was no single day she stopped feeling beautiful. It faded gradually, like a song drifting out of earshot. Maybe it was the way the compliments grew fewer. Maybe it was the way her husband, loving but distracted, stopped reaching for her hand. Maybe it was simply the slow, heavy silence that filled the space where affection used to live. Whatever it was, the mirror began to feel like a stranger. Helen stopped lingering there, stopped fixing her hair just so, stopped noticing herself at all. Because without touch, without the simple, affirming experience of being seen and desired, self-worth can quietly erode. It's not vanity, it's human. We are wired, deep in our biology, to need reflection, not just from glass, but from the eyes and hands of those who love us. When that reflection disappears, it's easy to start believing that we, too, have disappeared. And yet, something magical happens when intimacy is rekindled, even in small, tender ways. When someone holds you a little longer, when a hand rests on your lower back as you walk through a doorway, When a kiss lingers, just a second longer than expected. Those moments whisper to the soul, you are still beautiful. You are still wanted. You are still here. Helen didn't need a makeover. She didn't need a younger body. She needed presence, attention, the simple confirmation that she was still deeply lovable, exactly as she was. And slowly, as intimacy returned, so did her smile in the mirror. Not because she looked different, but because she felt different. Because true self-worth isn't about wrinkles or waistlines. It's about feeling connected, chosen, cherished. And while that reconnection breathes life back into our sense of self, it does something even more astonishing. It strengthens the very system that keeps us healthy, day after day, year after year. Let's explore next how intimacy plays a surprising role in boosting your immune system, and why staying connected isn't just good for the heart or the mind, but for your body's natural defenses, too. For most of her life, Dolores had a strong immune system. She rarely got sick, bounced back quickly from anything that came her way, and was always the first to bring chicken soup when someone else fell ill. But in her early 70s, something shifted. She started catching colds more often, felt run down more days than not. Even small cuts or bruises seemed to take longer to heal. At first, she blamed it on age. Just getting older, she'd say with a tired smile. But during a routine wellness visit, her doctor asked a question she hadn't expected. Are you still experiencing physical closeness in your life? Dolores blinked. You mean like intimacy? The answer, quietly, was no. And that's when the doctor explained something that changed the way she saw everything. Touch, affection, and sexual intimacy, at any age, support immune health. It turns out, during moments of physical connection, the body produces immunoglobulin A IgA, a vital antibody that plays a frontline role in defending us from viruses, bacteria, and infection. People who experience regular intimacy, even just kissing, hugging, cuddling, have significantly higher IgA levels than those who don't. But that's not all. Intimacy also reduces chronic inflammation, regulates hormone levels, and supports healthy sleep. All essential components of a strong immune response. Without that connection, the immune system becomes sluggish, not in a dramatic, overnight way, but slowly, subtly. You might find yourself catching every cold that comes around, feeling tired without a clear reason, recovering more slowly than you used to. That's what Dolores had been experiencing. And once she understood, she and her partner began making small, consistent efforts to bring physical closeness back into their lives. Not out of obligation, but out of intention. And over the months that followed, something changed. She felt stronger, brighter, more resilient, not just emotionally, but physically. Because connection doesn't just warm the heart, it strengthens the body. It reminds the immune system and the soul that we're not alone, that we're held, supported, safe. And while the immune system is quietly grateful, there's another system that may shout even louder when intimacy is lost: the nervous system. Let's now talk about stress and how the absence of intimacy can quietly raise anxiety levels, disrupt peace of mind, and steal your sense of calm without you even realizing it. There's a kind of stress that doesn't come from bad news or sudden events. It comes from stillness that feels too quiet, from silence that stretches too long, from a life that lacks soft places to land. That's the kind of stress Irene was feeling. At 78, she had everything she needed: a comfortable home, grown children who called often, and no serious health issues. But something felt off. Her chest tightened in the evenings. She startled easily. Sleep came late, and rest felt shallow. And she found herself worrying about little things, big things, nothing at all. When she brought it up with her doctor, he didn't reach for a prescription pad. Instead, he asked, "When was the last time you felt deeply connected to someone, physically and emotionally?" Irene hesitated. Her husband had passed 5 years ago. She still saw friends, still chatted on the phone. But that deeper connection, the kind where your body feels safe, your heart feels held, that had been missing for a long time. And here's what she learned. Intimacy is one of the most powerful natural stress relievers we have. During moments of closeness, the body releases dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin, a powerful trio of hormones that soothe the nervous system, regulate mood, and create a lasting sense of emotional balance. These aren't just feel-good chemicals. They are biological signals of safety. They tell your brain, you're okay now. You can let go. Without them, stress can build up slowly, silently, until your body starts to hold tension in ways you can't name. You may feel more irritable, more anxious, more alone. You may not even realize you're carrying stress until something small tips you over. That's what happened to Irene. So she began inviting closeness back into her life. Not romantic at first, but physical. She got regular massages, hugged her children longer, let herself be comforted without brushing it off. Eventually, she opened herself to new companionship. And when she finally allowed herself to be held again, really held, she cried. Not because she was sad, but because she had forgotten how much her body needed it. And over time, the tightness in her chest eased. Her sleep deepened, and she laughed more than she had in years. Because when we're touched with care, we remember we're not alone in the world. And that feeling, more than anything else, melts anxiety like sunlight on frost. But there's one more truth we need to face. When intimacy fades for too long, something deeper happens, not just emotionally, but physiologically. Your body begins to forget how to respond. Let's talk about what happens when you stop using the systems that support your intimacy, and how you can gently, safely, bring them back to life. Our bodies are brilliant at remembering. They remember how to ride a bike, how to tie a shoelace, how to hum an old tune without thinking. But here's the truth no one likes to say out loud. They also forget if we stop using them. Just like muscles weaken without movement, just like balance fades when we stop walking steadily, our body's intimate systems, the nerves, blood flow, hormones, and tissues, all slowly begin to shut down when we stop engaging them. This doesn't happen overnight. It's quiet, gradual, invisible at first. For men, it might show up as difficulty achieving or maintaining an erection. For women, it might mean increased dryness, discomfort, or a loss of natural responsiveness. For both, it can mean longer arousal times, less sensation, and a growing hesitation to even try. But none of these changes mean you're broken. They just mean your body needs gentle reminders. Take Bill and Nancy. They'd gone nearly 4 years without any physical intimacy. Not because they didn't love each other, but because life, health scares, and unspoken insecurities had gotten in the way. They both believed the spark was gone, that it was too late. But a conversation, a tender, honest one, opened a door. They didn't rush. They started small, a back rub, a long hug, sitting closer again, and slowly, they rediscovered what their bodies had forgotten. That closeness is a skill, and like any skill, it comes back with practice, patience, and kindness. And something beautiful happened. The awkwardness faded, the tension lifted, and their bodies, which had once felt disconnected, began to remember. Because intimacy after 60, 70, even 80 isn't about performance. It's about presence. It's about staying in touch, literally and emotionally, with your right to feel pleasure, affection, and connection. And if you've gone years, or even decades, without that, you are not alone. And it is not too late, because your body is listening. And with time, trust, and tenderness, they can remember. But how do you begin that process, especially if it's been a while? What small steps can you take today to reconnect, rekindle, and reawaken this vital part of your life? Let's bring it all together with a gentle, practical path forward. We often think intimacy fades with age, that it belongs to the young, the energetic, the newly in love. But the truth is far more beautiful and far more important. Intimacy is not just about physical touch. It's about connection, safety, feeling seen, valued, and alive. In this video, we explored how the loss of intimacy after 60 doesn't just affect your relationship. It can quietly impact your heart health, your sleep, your immune system, your confidence, even your memory. From stress and anxiety to physical stiffness and emotional distance, the absence of closeness leaves a mark, often in ways we never expect. But here's what inspired me most. Every one of those effects is reversible. With a little intention, a little courage, and a lot of heart, we can reignite connection at any age. Whether you're partnered or alone, whether it's been months or many years, you haven't aged out of closeness, affection, or love. You've simply been waiting for the right reminder that your needs still matter. Personally, I believe the most powerful form of self-care after 60 isn't just exercise or nutrition. It's staying emotionally and physically connected to yourself and to someone who holds you kindly. So if something in this video resonated with you, please give it a like. Comment below with one thing you're ready to reclaim or one small step you'll take today. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more honest, heart-centered conversations about aging well and living fully. Because the most meaningful years of your life aren't behind you. They're waiting to be chosen, felt, and shared.